Okay, we're streaming. Is everyone else okay? Excellent.
How are you? Good. How are you? Good. We haven't had this many people in the audience. Study session.
We always go everywhere together. We get a Greyhound bus.
Yeah. How did you?
No.
Did you tell the computer that? Tell her she's at that meeting because she was on the team. I don't think anyone.
I think we're just waiting for, I know President Noel is here, but we need to wait. Sorry, not starting on time.
Let's go ahead and call this meeting to order, and if we can please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and the salute to the New Mexico flag in English and in Spanish, as well as the acknowledgement of tribal land. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We acknowledge the original people of the land, the Tutoring people and other tribal nations, and ask them to walk with us today and to share and learn together. Thank you. Now to the approval of the agenda. If we could have a motion.
I recommend we approve it.
And I'll second.
Prior to that, should we acknowledge those that are not here?
Yes, thank you. We can acknowledge that Vice President Price is not here and Secretary Garcia has a county commission meeting at this time. So we have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? On to the introduction of the interpreter. Mr. Lugo.
Good evening, Madam President Noble, board members, and Deputy Superintendent Sink, and audience. I am James Lujan, and I am here to translate or be used as an interpreter as needed in Spanish. So if anyone needs that service, let me know. Soy James Lujan y sirvo como intérprete si es necesario. Si lo necesitan, por favor, levante la mano.
Thank you, Dr. Lujan. Anybody signed up for public forum? I'm guessing no.
There's no one for public.
Thank you. On to the presentation, Math Matters, Santa Fe Public School Strategies for Improving Math Performance, Professional Development, and Tutoring Effort. Are you kicking us off, Deputy Superintendent? Thank you.
Thank you, President Noble, members of the board. We are excited to be here tonight to once again talk about what we're doing about our math plan and how, just an update for you. But before we continue talking, I'd like for everyone, at least on this side of the table, to introduce themselves. And I'm not sure the board knows everybody, so if you don't mind. Again, my name is Linda Sink. I'm the Deputy Superintendent.
Vanessa Romero, Associate Superintendent.
Peter McQuain, Director of Curriculum Instruction.
I'm Jessica Langham, an interventionist at Ramirez Thomas.
Lynn Bickley, co-lead of Math Amigos.
Lynn Heffron, Tutoring Liaison.
And if I may, just as a point of privilege, I also want to acknowledge board member-elect Carmen Gonzalez is in the audience. Welcome.
Welcome. So we're here again before you presenting on our math plan. And we will be looking at Math Matters again. We've presented this to you before. We're going to do it a little bit differently. We will summarize some of the points, the important points, to refresh memories. But we are also going to go into a classroom, if you will, and see it in practice. So that I think you'll see it and be able to see what we're talking about as well as hear what we're talking about. It might make more sense. Because we get to see it all the time, and you all don't. So I think it's going to be fun, and we actually have someone here that's actually done the work, so it's very exciting for us. And then the next part is that we'll turn it over to our partners who will share their strategies that support this important work. Next. Somebody running this. So I think that the district plan, strategic plan, most people in here know about the strategic plan, but just to refresh your memory, we do have a strategic plan in relationship to our math goals, and our math goal is at the very least, at the minimum, that 40% of our students will meet or exceed expectation in math proficiency by 2023. We absolutely have our work cut out for us, but there's not a single person on our team or a principal or a teacher that believes we can't do that. And we are working very hard this year to even go deeper and harder, do more work to make it happen. So that's the kind of thing we'll talk about tonight. Some of the tactics I'll remind you of that we've been working on, even in the strategic plan, not even talking about the Math Matters framework yet, was that we have said that we will align all the instructional materials. We will be a team with our community. We have designed curriculum maps which provide teachers with math units based on the appropriate standards, and we've provided professional departments. They're all part of our math strategic plan, and we've added this now, this Math Matters framework to our strategic plan. The goals are understanding the district's implementation to shift professional learning and teaching in mathematics. And basically that shift is that we're going from the larger PD forums to now going right into classrooms and working with teachers directly, or into PLCs, professional learning communities, to work directly with teachers. Experience the mathematics framework for meaningful collaboration and best practices, and celebrate partnerships supporting our Math Matters initiative. So with that said, we'll have Ms. Romero look back again at the Math Matters initiative, and I hope this looks familiar to everybody.
Thank you, President Noble, board members, and Deputy Superintendent Sink. This slide was shared in a previous presentation, and it just goes over our philosophy that all educators believe that every student has the ability to learn challenging math with effective instruction and regular monitoring. This required us to look at our core instruction or Tier 1 instruction and how we're providing opportunities for reflection in both teaching and learning. And with that, looking at Tier 1, what does the classroom look like? How should instruction be delivered? And that's our framework, and I'll discuss that in the next slide. How are we utilizing our curriculum maps district-wide, and how are we pacing the standards of instruction? Also, how are we getting into our professional learning communities or grade level teams with principals, interventionists, and teachers, and looking at data and looking at areas where students need maybe additional support? And then, of course, also collaborating with our partners like Math Amigos. We can go on to the next slide. So once again, we've presented this framework. This is based on the gradual release of responsibility, which is scaffolding our instruction. It's gradually releasing responsibility to students so that they become independent in their learning. And one thing to keep in mind is all this is Tier 1 instruction or core instruction. We have to ensure that all students are receiving instruction at grade level. And this model, it's the teacher modeling, doing think alouds, delivering the instruction. Then you go into guided practice where students are working together, the teacher's checking for understanding before releasing kids to actually work independently on grade level standard. And when kids are released to do practice activities independently, the teacher is also pulling students back, and they're called strategy groups. So maybe reteaching the lesson one more time before they're released to do the work independently. So we need to look at Tier 1 instruction before we even get into interventions. Research suggests that, before we jump into interventions, 70 to 80% of students should be able to access and be proficient at grade level. Jumping to interventions right away doesn't solve that problem. We also included in this framework, what are behaviors of the leader, meaning the school site principal, and also what are the behaviors of a teacher? And so looking at the whole structure, how is the principal creating structures to have grade level meetings, to analyze data, to then provide professional development to their teachers? And then for the teachers, how are the teachers modeling, providing instruction at grade level, and the ability to look at data and analyze where students' strengths and maybe some gaps in their learning are taking place. And so it's a continual cycle, and it's an entire framework. So it's not only looking at what best practice looks like in the classroom, but it's ensuring that at a school site, there's some structures and systems put into place to ensure this instruction happens. Once again, we're super excited because we have it here on paper. We've talked about it before, and we thought, wouldn't it be a great opportunity for you guys to actually experience what this looks like at a school? And so what we're going to do now, I think the previous slide, we're going to show you how we're moving into grade level teams, how teachers are planning and collaborating together, planning lessons, and then we're going to go into Ms. Lang's classroom so that you can experience the entire framework of gradual release, how she scaffolded instruction from a mini lesson to guided practice to independent and strategy groups. And all this is at grade level standard. So we're super excited. I'm going to let Jessica speak for a moment before we start these videos.
So the first video is a PLC meeting amongst our fifth grade team at the time, and it's being facilitated by Cassie from Carnegie Learning. And the team is really focused essentially on the standard. Like, what is the standard that we need to address in fifth grade, and how are we going to get our kids to meet that standard? And so the team has come together. They all have the word problem. They've all solved the word problem as if they were students. They're going to talk about their methods for solving the problem, and then go through and practice, because this was done in a professional development setting, who's going to take which role, and how are they going to get through this with the students in the classroom so that at the end they're all successful, but how are they going to scaffold that from beginning to end for the students in the classroom. And then the second video is of me teaching a math lesson in a second grade classroom, and so you'll see me start with a warm-up or a connection, activating prior knowledge, reminding them of previous work that we've done, and then moving into the teaching for the day. Today I'm going to teach you, giving them the new strategy to add to their repertoire of strategies that they have for solving subtraction problems. I modeled for them and guided them through some of the work, and then I have task cards for different groups to do different tasks, and then I'll be meeting with different groups, guiding them in different ways to be successful at the second grade standard.
I wanted to make one more comment before we start the video. I really wanted the board to see what a PLC looks like. And PLCs can have different people in the PLC. So sometimes the principal will be at the PLC, or an assistant principal will be at a PLC. Sometimes some of our team in C&I are in a PLC to help them look at lesson plans and build lesson plans. So it depends on what the goal of that PLC is for that week, possibly. In this case, we've hired Carnegie to come in and help in our PLCs for modeling and helping them run, even run a PLC and modeling and building those lesson plans from that. So I was really wanting you to see some of that, and then we'll move into the classroom.
You just might want to remind people what PLC stands. I mean, I know what it stands for, but maybe some people in the audience are thinking, what is a PLC?
Good point, Board Member Cashman. So PLC is a professional learning community, and we are now expected to have professional learning communities in all of our schools for teachers to collaborate on their work.
Yes. Okay. So what does it say that they have to do in 5MDA1?
Just convert among different sites standard measurement units with a given measurement system, and use the conversions in solving multi-step real-world problems.
And it's a multi-step, and I mean, like, there's like 22. I think in this problem, there's a lot of multi-step stuff that they're doing. Okay. Okay, going back to how did you all come up with your answer?
Started with 1 gallon equals 4 quarts from the reference sheet.
Okay.
And then I looked at, I don't know, I kind of jumped around. I went, and in 1 cup there was 8 fluid ounces, so there's in 1 pint there's 16 ounces. And then I went from that there's 32 in 1 quart, and then I times 32 times 4 to come up with 128 ounces in a gallon.
So you hopped from, okay. Anybody do it a little bit?
Very effective.
No, well, it works for you, right? Okay. What are some other ways?
I switched it all to ounces, but I went in order from gallon to quart, quart to pint, pint to cups, cups to ounces, and got that there was 640 ounces, and then I figured out how much you used to fill each bottle in the pitcher, and subtracted that.
So when we're watching kids, it's going to be important. If they don't understand that it's 640 fluid ounces in a gallon, their answer is going to be all wrong. And that's something, as we're walking around, we need to pay attention and look for and ask that question. So how many fluid ounces are in a gallon? Because all of their other math can be correct, but that's going to throw them off. So getting them in that first read to figure out what they have to do. And so we like getting them to understand, we need to figure out what the total number of fluid ounces. Just focusing on that for step 1, so we all are looking for the same learning target, and ultimately that's our goal, right?
there any other ones? Yellow? 6 bottles? So we got bottles. Okay, so turn and talk, and I want you to think of this question. What is this problem asking us to solve? Okay? So you can tell your partner, I think it's asking to solve.
Morning, how are you? Good. Okay, so in math class, we've been learning lots of subtraction strategies, right? We learned about think addition, where if you see a subtraction problem, you can think about how we could flip it so it becomes an addition problem using your fact triangles. We learned yesterday about counting up. So like when the numbers are close together, you can count up like 16 minus 13, 13, 14, 15, 16. The answer is 3. You can count backwards. When the numbers you're subtracting is small, count back. So if we have 17 and we're taking away 3, we start at 17 and we count back 1, 2, 3 to get 14. Good. So if I put this problem up here, see that? 11 minus 3. Let's look at this first one. 11 minus 3. Hold on. What strategy do you think we should use? Counting up or counting back?
Counting back. Counting back.
Counting back? Why counting back, Santi?
Because it would be much easier.
Why easier? What does it say? It says when the number you are subtracting is small, count back. Is 3 a big number or a small number?
Small.
A small number. So this is probably a good strategy, right? So if I start at 11 and I count back 3, 11, count with me, 10, 9, 8. What's the answer? 8. I'm going to teach you 2 new strategies for subtracting. We're going to be learning about minus 0 as a strategy and minus 1 as a strategy. Minus 0. And when we're taking away 1, it's just always 1 less. Always 1 less. Add this to our page. Look how many subtraction strategies you have, second graders.
We have 1 more page.
Oh my goodness.
We could fit more. We could fit more. 1 more.
So today, this is important.
We're doing additions?
Subtraction.
Yay!
Today I've made your math groups for you, okay? So on this page it has the people that are in your group, and then it has a list of things that you and your group are going to do, okay? So when you're working on these pages, you're going to work by yourself, but if you need help, your group can help you, okay? So you're going to follow the order, and at the end is a game. But you got to get through all your work to get to your game, okay? Minusing zeros and ones. We're going to start it together, okay?
What's that?
We'll be careful, okay? And then we'll send you to your spots. So remember when we're minusing zeros, what happens to the number?
The same number.
It stays the same, that's right. And when we minus 1, what happens to the number? It goes up 1 or down 1? Down, because we're taking away, we're subtracting, we're making the number smaller. Okay, so if we have our number, we take 1 away. So let's look at the first one together. Okay, what's the first problem? 5 minus 0. 5 minus 0. So what are we going to do to that 5? Is it going to change? Nope. So what's the answer? Go for it. Okay, what's the next one? 7 minus 0. What's the answer? Good job. Okay, the next problem. 8 minus 0. And now you're going to go do number 2 on your lesson map. Here's your number grids. Okay. Here's your number grids. 75 was our other number. Or 75 right here.
Sure. I don't know if you have questions about certain parts of the videos.
So if you want to find the difference,
Board Member Cashman.
count these by 10.
If we're just talking about the video, in that first video, did we say a gallon has 640 fluid ounces? I hope we didn't say that. That's what it sounds like it implied in that video. And that's what I heard, and I thought, we need our teachers to understand. I mean, it's 128 if people don't know how many fluid ounces are in a gallon. So if we're telling our teachers in their PLCs, they're going and generating that because we know a lot of our teachers are afraid to teach math. So before you show that first video, please relook at it because that's concerning to me.
We'll review it, yes. Okay. Any other questions on other pieces?
So, when you saw me lean over to Maureen, that's what I was saying to her when that video was like, wait a minute, isn't it 128? So there's that. And then, sometimes it seems as though we're overcomplicating something that, at least as I remember being taught math at Hancock Park Elementary School in Los Angeles by Mrs. Lubin and Ms. Schlockman, that's grades 3 and 4 respectively, that there was more rote learning relative to things like flashcards and those things where I believe that people of a generation that's maybe 40 plus, 45 plus, when we look at numbers, our brain sees the answer, right? And I wonder to what extent, and I'm not a teacher, but Lord knows in many, 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 many years I've learned a lot about teaching and by paying attention. And I wonder to what extent we're maybe hindering our kids' ability because we're not teaching them how to memorize. And where the whole movement is away from rote learning, where rote learning does have a place in teaching. And so there's that piece. And my thinking is, in always trying to find answers in the quest for something new, we are not being as aware or respectful of those things that worked when the United States was at its best in math and science in the world. And when that was because of the space program primarily, but it was in the 60s and early 70s. And I bring this up because when Leo, my son, when we were looking at schools, we were one of those parents also that after Wood Gormley is like, where are you going to go to school? And more it was his mom. It wasn't me at all. I would have sent him right into Capshaw. But that's not the way it all worked out. But I remember when we were doing all these interviews with schools, we went to prep, and I remember there being a math teacher there. And you probably know who I'm talking about. And he said that one of the things that he was doing was buying up all these textbooks and finding them from all over the country, math textbooks from the 1960s, late 60s, early 70s, because they worked. And so it just makes me wonder the move away from that. And, you know, this whole, so I'm curious as to how this works. And then while Jessica, right?
Yes.
And where I saw you giving attention to kids at Ramirez Thomas, I'm also, I can't help but wonder if a class has, 23 to 25 kids, and you're able to have that attention on 4 or 5 then, and then we have to move to these other 4 or 5 and other 4, and how the right amount of attention, how we know they're getting it, and what are we doing if they don't get it?
I can
So you can speak to all that, that'd be
sure.
great.
I think there is a balance between fluency and abstract learning, and I can speak to a lot of the curriculum provides both those opportunities for abstract learning and then the piece for fluency, which you're saying, the rote learning. At the end of this lesson, which is not filmed, there's games and activities, and that's students' opportunities to practice their fluency. So it's both. So kids are being exposed to the word problems and things that are abstract, but then also having the opportunity to work with manipulatives or charts or games to practice their fluency. And so there is a balance. So I agree, and I think students are receiving both, the rote or the fluency, as well as the abstract.
So, and it may not be we're doing it anymore, I hope we are, but when I was teaching, we always required our students to do so much reading at home because we know practice,
Right.
but I'm not sure we're always requiring practicing those multiplication or addition facts and I always use this as an example even when I was teaching with my kid. If I said, what is your name? They need to be able to tell me their name. They don't need to be thinking about the strategy on what am I called? Well, am I called this today? They need to be saying, my name is Maureen or whatever. Just like they have to, because those basic facts, first of all, they serve 2 purposes. They're not going to succeed in higher math. And everybody says, well, everybody's using calculators. And that's true. But if you punch in the wrong number, and you were supposed to punch in 1 times 5, and you happen to punch in 1 times 500, that's a world of difference. And so, I know that maybe not every teacher, well, I know teachers aren't doing it, but just like it's important for our kids to be reading at home every day, it's important for them to be practicing those basic skills, and maybe even more so than taking home word problems, because I would say a lot of our parents struggle with those word problems. So I would tell always the parents, I'm not asking you to be a pro in multiplication. I'm giving you the answers. So your child should come back and give those answers because, and then we can talk about the beads and moving things around and the blocks, but there's a certain point that if they can't get that stuff out quick enough out of their brains, they're going to be, and I used to have some kids, they got the answer done, but if you can only do 1 problem in 6th grade by the time math is over, and other kids have already done 25 to 40 problems, you're not going to be successful. So there's a balance between understanding the strategies. And maybe board president Noble, because she's in the thick of it right now with her son, I'm sure she's more aware of what's coming home, in the packets and, but somehow we got to.
Yes, and we do ensure many schools also incorporate like the timed fluency tests for addition, subtraction, multiplication. That's still incorporated into student learning. And I don't know if Jessica, you'd like to add anything about.
Yeah, I can speak to the fluency work at Ramirez Thomas because that's my zone. But I know we have fluency tests for grade level based on whatever their fluency standard is within the Common Core. And so we build up to that. In 2nd grade, it's adding and subtracting within 20. And so we sort of build on that through the year, so by the end of 2nd grade, they are able to do that. And that's something that we assess throughout the year just like in 5th grade, it's multi-digit multiplication, and what number of problems is appropriate for, you know, a minute or 3 minutes, and what are the small steps we're gonna get them there by the end of the year. We have, just like we have literacy nights, how you can help support your kids at home with their reading. We have math nights, how can you support your kids at home with their math? And a lot of it is done through games, and we make lots of copies of the games and instructions for the games, and it's the games they play in the classroom. They can take the materials home and play those games so that they are practicing addition, multiplication, learning those rote facts quickly. And then to address your question about meeting when the small groups, the point of the small group is that you are able to meet kids at their individual level of need. And so those 3 kids that you're meeting with, you're checking in to make sure that they're understanding it at that level. And you're giving them an assignment. I want you to work on this, and I'm gonna check in with you tomorrow and see how you're doing. And I'm gonna go here, check in with you tomorrow and see how you're doing. And so it is that constant assessment, and it might not be everybody's getting the same assessment, because it's not appropriate for everybody to have the same assessment, but it is, this group is needing this and this group is needing me to give them this much support and scaffold it this way, and I will check back in with you and can I pull away some of this scaffolding now and give you a little bit more of ownership of this work. And it is that balance of the teacher constantly assessing and monitoring and collecting data, not only through like actual work, but just what they hear the kids, the conversations that they're having, and then moving them to the next level so that they are able to meet that grade level standard.
And so just one thing on the Fluency, and I'm not going to advocate a program, but I know a program that works. But, you know, everybody thinks if I give, you know, a minute, you have so many problems. And, you know, basically I felt that way too as I taught, until a different teacher on a different side of town said, actually it was the little boy that said to me, I am so excited about learning multiplication tables. I was thinking this is a 4th grader, you know. But the other thing that I hope we are doing for our kids is when we give those time fluencies, there are programs out there that recognize if you can only write so fast, you cannot, you know, if it takes me a long time to write my numbers, then my goal is different from somebody that can whip right through it. So our kids are, you know, because the minute they find out they're not successful, and they know in kindergarten, which, you know, and so, you know, if we keep on perpetuating, it just all of a sudden just compounds. And so somehow you have to say, well, if you have an advantage that you have good fine motor skills, and you're working as quick as you can, but your fine motor skills may be a little bit slower, there's no way
that they'd be
so I hope we're using approaches like that, because there are programs out there that definitely work that way, and so they allow our kids to be successful and still get to the same end goal that we need.
Yes, and I think a lot of teachers differentiate in that way in what you're speaking of.
Yeah, and I think the small group work speaks exactly to that. You want kids to feel successful, and so if all 25 of your students are given the same task and required to do the same work, you're automatically just going to be, you know, defeating a lot of kids who can't yet do that work. And so in the small group, if you're scaffolding their learning, you're giving them extra tools, you're taking away some of the work for them, you're making them successful, you're making them feel like they can. And that's how we want all of our kids to feel. And when they're successful there, then you give them a little bit more and you take away a little bit more support and you get them successful and you just keep moving them along instead of this, you all get it, and whether you get it or not, you know, that's not my problem, that we can't think like that anymore. We have to get these kids to feel successful. And I've seen this work. I've seen it be very powerful, and kids enjoy school. They love coming to class. They love doing math. Kids who said, I can't do math, now they can do math because they got through the work you asked them to do, because they had appropriate supports and appropriate help from their teacher, and it worked for them.
And I guess the other point I would just make on that particular, on the videos, is we have to realize too that it's not only for our kids to feel successful, especially in the math area, but for our parents to feel successful, because parents come home and the kid says, well, what about, I have to tell this strategy, and their parents are looking and say, I don't even understand what you're telling me. I mean, we used to have new math, we have all of these different things. We have to have our parents feel successful.
Right.
So I would hope that what we're sending home allows the parents to also be successful, because the worst thing to do is to have parents that are trying to help their children and they're maybe not doing what we as educational professionals would like them, and for kids to come back and then we're unteaching, so I'm not a big believer in a lot of homework. I give homework that I know everybody's going to come back, they're going to have the right answers, but all of this that, because, if we have parents that can help and they are teaching something differently, then they're frustrated, they don't want to help their kids, but the worst thing is for our kids to have wrong concepts reinforced.
Board Member Cashman, another thing is we try to ensure that the homework that's being sent home is something that they can do independently. We never want to send even a book home for kids to read that they can't do successfully on their own.
So I would just say, and I appreciate this, I actually have been, the homework is sometimes strange, and sometimes I'm like, that's a stupid question. Don't even worry about it. But I have been appreciating the recent homework, which is, there was one for Halloween, and then there was a turkey, which is actually doing a bunch of math problems, and then depending on what the range of answers you get, you color. And the coloring takes a while, but it's quite a few problems, and I was sort of liking that, because it's like, good, just move through it, do the problems. And I do have a child who is in 3rd grade and says he loves math and is excited about division. He's one of those, and I actually credit a huge amount. Maybe he had an aptitude to begin with, but my mother, who self-identifies as math girl, started teaching him strategies, not unlike the things in the video. How are you thinking about this? How are you approaching this? From probably before he could talk. And so that has been going on for a long, long time, and they do it in the car. And, I think it's probably part of the reason he likes math, feels successful. And I guess my question is, it seems to me, and what I've seen over the, 4 years now that we've been, that my child's been in school and doing math, the math homework is as regular as the reading homework. There's usually 1 page a night, and it's been going up in difficulty appropriately. And I've seen the different groups that the teachers create. It's usually 3, and he's had classes between 20 and 25 people, so, that's about right, 7 or 8 in each group. What happens, and is there a specific strategy, and I don't know if we're getting to this, but for anyone above or below the sort of band that is the grade level? Because that has been, my son actually would like more challenging math, and that's been met with varying degrees of success. And I know that there are students who will fall below that sort of appropriate grade level band. So I guess my question is, what do we do outside the grade level?
I can speak to some of the things that I've seen and things that we did at Remitas Thomas during that 30-minute block of intervention. So after kids receive the core instruction, and during that intervention block, it shouldn't just be seen as interventions, it should also be seen as enrichment or extensions. And so that all kids are receiving, whether they need work on a specific skill or they're excelling, and so you want to provide those opportunities for students as well. So they receive the core at grade level, but then during that 30-minute block, they should be receiving extensions in their learning.
President Noble, if you don't mind, we'll finish up this presentation so our partners can get started. We just have one more slide.
We're very mindful that district initiatives can live or die by their rollout. So we're very strategic on how we're rolling out our Math Matters framework. We start with making sure that the principal supervisors are cognizant of the Math Matters framework and at a glance can look at artifacts from teachers, artifacts from the principal's documents to see if teachers are implementing it. We have look-fors to use in conversations with principals to see if they're aware of all of the aspects of Math Matters framework. And really that's to allocate support. Our principals and our interventionists have received and continue to receive layers of support that start with a whole presentation, but then it moves into a series of site-based, job-embedded professional development that really embraces gradual release. What we want to do is we want to make sure that there are teachers in every grade level capable of participating in active professional learning communities that make sense of student work and use that student work, that data, if you will, to drive instruction with the intent and the goal of increasing student learning. And then, of course, the Math Matters lesson plan framework. Utilizing open access. It is an online platform that Santa Fe Public Schools utilizes to push out opportunities for professional development, and it is quite robust because now we are able to videotape professional development and post it on open access. We're able to put pre-assignments when there's professional development coming up. We can have communication on open access to create dialogue and ongoing sustainability of our professional developments to transition from PD to practices. November 5th, we had an extremely successful in-service day. We had over 200 teachers involved in in-service. 80 of those teachers participated in the Math Matters lesson plan framework. And the comments at the end of the day were extremely, extremely positive because teachers had an opportunity to collaborate across sites on grade level. This is something that our curricular maps are aiming to do, is add this cohesion across our district. And this is something that our material adoption is aiming to do, is to increase the coherence from site to site to site. And on November 5th, we saw this in action, where we had teachers of second grade teachers, third grade teachers, fourth grade, fifth grade, so on and so forth, able to sit down and able to select a standard and to discuss their practices with teaching that standard, really to capitalize on the collective expertise of our teachers that we have here in Santa Fe. And we have amazing teachers in Santa Fe. If we give them space and time to collaborate, it's mind-blowing of what they can produce. Our job-embedded PD, we saw an example of this job-embedded PD, but we are transitioning to pushing into sites, supporting teachers in their communication of making sense of student work. Dr. Sugent's assessment for learning data dashboard is a cornerstone in these conversations because what we're able to do is we're able to prioritize our standards and we're able to meet students exactly where we're at, because at the click of a button we have students' historical achievement, and we can use that to predict and to project what students need to move forward. Also, principal PLCs. Our sites are generating data as we go. We give our MAPS assessments. We have iStation assessments. And we also have just student work. And when principals get together, giving them an opportunity to discuss their sites' data, to pool the collective expertise of our principals, to refine and enhance our practices. And then lastly, we have our exemplar teacher lesson plans. On our curriculum maps, we have, teachers are able to access some lesson plans that really outline what is the gold standard for planning and preparation. We can go to the next slide. And this is the big question slide. I'd like to open it up, and if you, after questions, we'll transition to our community partners.
Board Member Cashman.
So I'm just gonna go through slide by slide on questions that I have, and we can, so on.
We can jump in, Board Member Carrillo, if you're up for it.
Okay, like we've done it. So on slide number 2, do we feel confident we're gonna meet this goal of 60% of our students proficient by 2022, 2023? And when will the board be notified when this goal cannot be met? Because we, you know, if you're looking at where our kids are in math, and I know it depends on different grades and different schools, but we're not close to this goal in almost any of our schools. So when is the board going to be that this is, you know, moving a few percentage points is not going to get us to this goal? So when will the board be notified that this goal needs to be readjusted? It's not realistic. I believe it is realistic myself, but I know the type of work to get there. But we need to, because we know, you know, most of the jobs nowadays are involving some sort of STEM for our kids to get out of poverty. So when will the board be notified, and what should we expect to see at the end of this school year? Where are you sort of in your mind saying, okay, if we see 25% of our kids, and I would say that's probably pretty hard when we see scores a lot lower, but we've got to hold ourselves accountable, and the community is expecting this from us.
President Noble, Board Member Cashman, the aspirational goal is 60%. The minimum is 40%. And we have many of our schools already getting close to that 40%. There's still schools that aren't close to the 40, and that is the reason that we dug deep this year and went in and dug deeper on our math plan. We had a math plan for the last 2 years. But what we did for this year is we dug deeper, and we've gotten much more exact, if you will, on what we must see in the classroom, what we're expecting to see in the classroom now when we walk in at any given time. We're doing a lot more, as I said, the framework is really expecting teachers almost minute by minute. We were leaving that a little bit more to teachers in the past, but when we were realizing we weren't growing fast enough, we weren't seeing that growth fast enough, we needed to do something at that point. So I'll even be talking at the State of the Schools about certain schools that have already gotten actually to this or above it, schools like Pinion. And I believe that if schools like Pinion can do this, then any school can do this. I think it depends a lot on, again, not giving up on professional development and coaching. I really believe coaching is everything. Our interventionists are helping us with teachers in the classroom. And I'm going to give you an example. Last year to this year in reading, when we started the Read First Santa Fe, we also built a framework for that too. Step by step. We saw schools making 20, 30, and 40% jumps. We finally saw our high school move like 25% in 1 year. So I personally think that if with our partners, our 2 Lyns over here mean a lot to me, because I think with practice, they help us with the practice, they help us with the tutoring. With our PD, And we're very, very serious, and we're very direct. And we also talked to Dr. Garcia about, we need your help, Dr. Garcia, to make it an expectation. And she jumped on that immediately. We wrote them out and worked on those expectations for 2 to 3 weeks, and then went to the institute with those expectations. There was not one principal that argued it. There was not one principal that said they couldn't do this work. It was actually astounding to me. So do I think that we can get there? I believe if we keep on the road and we don't give up. On the page, if you go back, Ruth, back to the page that Peter talked about, on that page right there, just 2 years ago, you didn't see one thing happening in this district on that page. Not one. Now there are expectations for every teacher and every principal in this district. There was no such thing as curriculum maps. There's no such thing as a math plan. There was no such thing as exemplar lesson plans. There was no such thing as PLCs in this district. There were no such thing as interventions at each of the classes. We didn't have an open access resource where we're putting all the curriculum maps that teachers can go on and help build lesson plans at every time. So yeah, this is the framework. This is the work we've built. This is your framework for your house that you're building. I do believe we can get there. Is every student going to be successful? That's our goal. Will some not be able to do it because they don't come to school? Possibly. And their goal is to get kids to school too. But that is still our goal, somewhere between that 40 and 60%. And this is where the superintendent comes in, of course, if she feels like that we're not making that, if we're not going to make I believe we're going to make the 40% with all schools. But if there's a point in there that she's worried and we need to revamp and re-look at it again and work with you all again, I'm sure she's going to do that. I mean, that's what a leader does. You know, what day that's going to happen, I can't tell you.
Ms. Bickley? Oh.
Just to follow on to that. So then we should, and we need to, I shouldn't say we should, but we need to.
Yes.
Are we going to see those percentages at our high schools too? Because those aren't looking good, you know, I mean, and so we do a disservice to our students every time we send a student to a secondary school and they spend good hard dollars, whether it's from the state lottery or their own parents, and they sit in developmental and remedial courses. And so I would like to see, which isn't in the presentation, but I know we have it, how many of our kids are over at the community college that weren't math ready that we sent. Now that doesn't talk about UNM and all these other things, but at least we know the community college can provide us that data to have any of our kids sitting in remediation. We are failing our students. I mean, there will always be a few, but if we've got more kids because they're getting burnt out in college, they can't move on and get that degree if they're stuck in remediation.
Board Member Cashman, one thing that I would like to say, and it's not an excuse, it's just a fact, that 3 years ago and just 2 years ago, I told you we had no framework. We didn't have a math plan. We didn't have expectations of our teachers. Those kids were already in middle school. And I saw when I first came here and I started visiting all the classrooms and looking at the type of math instruction, that it wasn't where it needed to be. So if those kids in middle school didn't get that instruction and they come in 3 grade levels lower than they're supposed to be, we might see growth. And I really believe we see growth. Teachers work so hard to see growth. But are they at the point to go to UNM and be successful? I doubt it, and that's why you see them going to a CNM or to a Santa Fe Community College. But the good news is they're going to Santa Fe Community College. So that's still good news. They're not just dropping out of high school because they can't do the algebra at all, or they can't do anything. there's some good news there. But the better news is that we're trying to prepare, and that's what I promised you when I got here, that we were going to start building a framework for kids to be successful so they're on grade level, just like Miss, what's your name? Ms. Romero said. We've got to build their framework and build their skills, and like you said, early years. You can't expect a teacher to go from 6th grade math to 12th grade math in a year. So that, we've got to catch up with each other, and that's what we're trying to do as well.
Ms. Bickley.
I just want to say that given the depth of what we've just heard, given the tremendous community resources that we have that have not been tapped in terms of partnerships and reimagining, I really believe that this town, in partnership with Santa Fe Public Schools, expanded, stronger community partnerships that bring in many partners that maybe haven't been involved. I think we can get there. So I think it's really important, and I'm sort of jumping the gun here, but it's really important to look to a positive future, that we can bring in new resources. They're not tapped here. I've never been in such a small town with so many talented people and, you know, so many funders, you know, that I think could be swung on board.
Board Member Carrillo.
It's 80%. More than 80% of our kids need remedial math and English when they go to the community college. And in math, and it's closer to 85, and I mean, I got those numbers from them at their admissions office. So it's that bad. And so we have failed these kids. Now you haven't, or you haven't, or you haven't, because you weren't here when all these kids were going through elementary. But so I would have, Peter, I have to ask a question specific to Peter.
Yes, sir.
We're rolling out all of this.
Yes, sir.
How are you, as the Director of Curriculum and Instruction, going to follow up to make sure that this is it's one thing rolled out correctly. It's one thing to have everybody excited when they come for PD at BF Young. It's another thing to see whether or not this is actually being done, whether principals are making their observations, because as I understand it, we have no accountability system for that at all, as where we used to, we'll actually have metrics that we used that don't exist right now. But how are you, as the Director of Curriculum and Instruction, going to make sure that this is being rolled out to your satisfaction at all the school sites, and how are principals going to be held accountable?
I really appreciate that question. So, do you mind?
And we'll look at that.
By coordinating with Teaching and Learning and Ms. Romero, we are creating a platform for principals when they convene for their PLC meetings. They're not reporting data that's detached from them. They're reporting their data, their student achievement data. And when we're looking at growth, we're looking at growth measures being produced from iStation, growth measures being produced from MAPS. Gone are the days of waiting for the autopsy assessment at the end of the year and then playing Monday morning quarterback. So we're being proactive in this approach. We're also tracking our sites where our supports are going to. For example, when we go and we're rolling out Dr. Sugent's tool in conjunction with this Math Matters framework, and might I say, if you have a class of 20 students and you want to increase student achievement by 10%, that's 2 students. All you have to do is get 2 additional students over the bar. So we have empowered teachers using that data dashboard to identify students, to identify their needs, and to design their lessons to meet their needs. So by having these PLCs, by informing the support supervisors, the site support supervisors as to the framework, and by putting in layers of support for the principals to then again create a platform, an ecosystem at their school where their teachers can collaborate in celebrating growth, we are seeing this transition. And we can tell you, this school, what layers of support they've already had, what layers of support do they need.
Okay. So the challenge sometimes with percentages, and I would say what I would refer to as the mental gymnastics involved in that, is that you just made my case for me. You have 20 kids, 2 kids got to the
Right.
bar, but 18 kids didn't. And it's like when Monte and other schools have come to us and boasted about different achievements, the way they can use statistics there, they can say that I'm using this number, so my overall growth is this. Yeah, but you just left 18 kids behind, okay? And so I know that Maureen and I, in these last years, have really tried to focus much more on proficiency. So I think we have to be really careful in how we kind of use those numbers.
I agree with you.
And then this is November 12th. And I remember when Dr. Sujit made his presentation in the first, and it was really, I mean, I still remember it. It was an incredible presentation. And I think that it really excited a lot of us on the board about what's next. Okay, so what's next? It's November 12th. I would be interested to know what has happened between, I think it was August 6th and November 12th, relative to teachers now having all of these tools where they can instantly intervene because now they know, are they doing this? Because, and I'll be really honest with you, you know, as I'm door knocking, and then sometimes teachers are answering the doors, right? They're saying no. The district is great at saying they're gonna roll out things, but then when it comes to rolling it out, no, we're not doing this in my school. This is one school east of St. Francis and one school the other side, is way the other side of St. Francis. And teachers saying, no, you guys talk a really good game, but when it comes down to giving us the tools we need and following through after something like the November 5th meeting, you guys, you dropped the ball.
And just a moment, if I may, Ruth, I don't know if you noticed, but Secretary Garcia has arrived. Thank you. Ms. Romero.
Board Member Carrillo, since the presentation at the beginning of the year, we've been super excited because Suchint, along with the principal supervisors, have gone to every school and have trained every single teacher at every single school. And so it's either looked like a whole staff meeting where Suchint is providing the same training on how to utilize the tool, how to look up standards, how to look at individual students, or it has been with the core team at each site. So Suchint has gone to every single school since then.
Okay, well, that's great to hear. The other thing I would have to ask, and I would hope, even though it maybe hasn't been asked, it's certainly been thought of, is we're in year 4 now, right? I'm sorry the superintendent's not here, but we're in year 4.
Of the strategic plan?
No,
of the superintendent,
leadership
year 4.
And a lot of different people with the district being leaders in their different departments. So what I would have to ask is, what haven't we done in the last 2 years? First year being a get acquainted year. What haven't we done in the last 2 years? Why didn't we recognize, I would say, the crisis of math teaching in the district? And I know we have high expectations of this, and I do too. What's your plan when it doesn't get to 40? Because even though respectfully you said many of our schools are near 40, I would say a fraction of our schools are near 40, an itty-bitty fraction. And most of them are closer to like, I just actually took everything out of this book before I got here tonight, because I had all those charts you always give us. And many of them are at 8, 10, 11 on math. So I agree with Board Member Cashman that if you're looking at 2023, 60 I think is ridiculous. 40% being within maybe the realm of possibility, but I don't think so, because you're looking at sustainable growth of what, 8% a year in many schools, 8 and 9% a year. And so I'm concerned about why we didn't, over the last 2 years, why we didn't address this as a math emergency. I'm happy we're addressing the math emergency now. And what are we gonna do when we find out? It's already November, first semester's almost over. What are we gonna do at the end of February when we realize, oh my God, this first year we're not even close to reaching the benchmark that we'd hoped? So what's the plan?
President Noble, members of the board, Board Member Carrillo, it's a hard question, and I feel like, and I'll take responsibility for that question and answer it as best I can. I think it's multi-layered. I think there's a lot of teachers in our district that, in elementary especially, do not have the tools to teach the math and did not somehow pick up those tools in college, and we're trying to help them and support them, and we began doing that 2 years ago. What we realized this past year, which is last year, that it wasn't working as well as we want it to work, so we had to dig deeper too. So that's why we developed this latest plan. There's a lot of people that truly don't understand how to teach math, just like we have realized even in reading. So I'll go back to reading for 1 second. We also showed you last year our new plan in reading and the reading framework. And what we've done is in phases is reteach how to teach reading. And for instance, this summer we had 80 teachers at a math institute. We had 80 teachers in this first phase come for 5 days, 6 to 7 hours a day. So it was like college. And the evaluations basically said, I wish I would have had this in college. So they don't have the fundamental, it's not like they're not, I don't want to call them not good teachers. They're not educated teachers. And so what we're trying to do with 700, is it 700 teachers? We're having to re-educate that. The other problem in math, I've told you this for the last couple of years, is we don't have a very good instructional material. We're finally looking at 21st century Common Core based instructional material for math we're going to adopt this year, finally. So that's been a hard thing, especially, I believe, on us. And then just building the curriculum maps. We were not teaching to standards either. So it's so multi-pronged of the problem. That's why I feel like that we can really make a difference now, because we finally built it. They weren't teaching to standards. They didn't know how to teach to standards, and they didn't understand the framework that we are now teaching. That's the best answer I can give you. Are there people still out there that aren't doing the best they can do? I would say so. But I'm going to say again that we also have and had 3 years ago kids that were already way behind. So that's not helping matters anyway. We can still keep seeing growth, and we are seeing growth in ELA. Now I want to see growth in math, and we're starting to see that in some schools. And I gave Pignon as an example, that if we can do it in Pignon, because they have a variety of students there, they have all the spectrum of students, why can't we do it in every school? And we do have, I want to answer one other thing that you brought up. We do have with Team Santa Fe, the supervisors of the principals meet every Monday for 2 to 3 hours about what we're seeing in the school and how we're trying to support our principals. And then I take that information back to our C&I group and to every director in our building. Everybody is a hands-on deck, and we're not going to give up. So I don't have an answer that everything's peachy right now, but we're also working hard and we're not giving up. I think it comes back to Lynn Heffron and Lynn Bickley, that we need more of Lynn Heffron's and Lynn Bickley's, because there's a lot of kids not at grade level. And so we need their help to bring them up to grade level. And I'm excited to hear from them tonight as well. I mean, although we meet together too, I'm excited to hear from them and what support they're going to help us, because we have that. We don't have just the grade level to jump. We have grade levels to jump in so many of our kids.
Board Member Cashman.
So I know it sounds like this end of the table is criticizing. We're not criticizing our staff. We're not criticizing our teachers. We know they're working hard. But the bottom line is, it doesn't matter how, and I tell this to my kids all the time who are in college, it doesn't matter how much you study. Some people can look at the information and they can be done in 10 minutes and they're acing this, and others are spending days upon days. It's understanding what you don't know and how to move on. And so it's working smart, as I always tell my kids. But the one thing that just a couple of points that I'm concerned about, I don't see it so much in reading. I don't see people walking around, adults, and I bet you we could probably maybe even pull the audience here. It's not a representative audience because they're here because they care about math. But loads of adults have a math phobia. I wasn't good in math. I can't do it. So rather than capitalize, and you know, I've talked with the superintendent about this multiple times. We have teachers, and you know those teachers, that are fantastic in teaching our kids how to read at the younger grade. We also have teachers that are passionate, especially at our elementary schools, because elementary, you're expected to be a jack of all trades. We have teachers that are awesome in math. We're not saying, okay, if you feel like Jessica, if you feel like you're really a great math person, then and you're passionate about it, wouldn't it be better to use those teachers, and just like in the high school, you go to a math teacher, you get tutored. Maybe we need to rethink this model. You know, I know we haven't, and I've been saying it over, but I think it would make our teachers happier if they don't have to prepare math and reading and social studies and science. You're asking a lot at the elementary level. And maybe to say, if you have a passion, then maybe you go to the classrooms. Now, I know it's a difficult concept because working in the elementary, that means everybody's got to stay on task. And you can't say, oh, well, I'm not getting there today because we're doing this, because if the teachers are moving. But you don't have to give me an answer, but I want you to think about it, because the board has said they're going to start reimagining. And this is an important thing. If we have teachers that are passionate in math, in science, in reading, and they really are the subject experts, don't we want that for everybody, then to have everybody be sort of competent, but, you know, passion always drives it. So just something for you to think about. The other thing that I think we need to be really honest about, and I think the SYNC brought it up, is we know our kids are behind grade levels. But I think maybe approach is, if you say, I mean, because I hear this, whether it's the middle school or the high school, you know, the middle school teachers say, what happened? What happened there? I'm getting these kids, what happened? They're not prepared for the skills that I need to teach advanced math. High school teachers are saying, what's the middle school teachers doing? I think maybe how to maybe change the dynamics. There are some key core subjects in math, whether it's number sense, whether it's place value. There are key things that if you don't have those basic principles, you can't do higher level math. And so if we informally surveyed or formally surveyed our high school math teachers, what are you, I mean, I know nobody wants to criticize anybody, but what do you see missing when those kids show up at 9th grade on day one and you say, now I'm supposed to be teaching algebra, and what do you need? And if we said the same thing, then maybe we can help the elementary teachers, because there's so much to teach, and a good teacher can say, I can catch up on some of these skills, but I need some basics that you send me those kids, and then I can quickly, but if they don't come with any, so just something for you to think about. I don't want you to answer me, but the one question I do want an answer to, I know it has worked for our reading to have reading coaches, interventionists. How many coaches, math coaches, do we have at each one of our schools, and how many math interventionists? And are those separate? Because we know we put in separate reading people that aren't teaching the regular course. How many of those and are they at all of our elementary schools?
Board Member Cashman, I can say that our interventionists are supporting teachers in both reading and math. And I'll let Jessica speak to what she's doing at her school, but yes, they are supporting teachers with their small group planning, looking at standards, utilizing assessment.
Are they all, she asked, like, are they in all schools?
Every elementary has an interventionist, and some schools have full-time interventionists, and then there's some schools with part-time interventionists.
So I can speak to the work that I do at Remedis. I coach teachers, and primarily that happens in the PLC. And so the importance of the PLC is that the grade level team is coming together and they're talking about standards, they're talking about the curriculum, and they're talking about best practices. So if there is a teacher who isn't as confident in teaching math, but there is a teacher who is, those teachers can come together and talk about, this is what I do, this is how I've done it, this is how I've been successful, try this. And they can share strategies like that across science, math, reading, writing, and I can help facilitate those conversations and bring in information from other grade levels because I attend PLC meetings. I can go and, oh, well, 5th grade is trying this, maybe you guys in 4th grade could support them in building that here before they get there. But I think the PLC is where a lot of that work should happen between teachers where they can share that. Because I do think that the relationship that a child builds with one teacher is really important at the elementary age. And I think teachers using their common planning time and using that PLC time to talk about how they do it, how they've been successful, is really good.
And President Noble would like Suchint to mention a few things about what we're doing with the data before we finish our part.
Okay, in just a moment, but Secretary Garcia had a comment or question.
Just really quick, I understand where my two board members here are actually going with this, and thank you for the honesty of explaining what you're doing. And this is almost, it's almost like a nationwide thing. The public schools nationwide they're being challenged throughout the nation, and definitely New Mexico is being challenged. And as Board Member Correa is probably thinking, how do we get to that next level, which you all and the team of Dr. Garcia is doing, and it's going to take a little while to get the machine going. Like I said, there's kids in my district from kindergarten to 12th grade, and some of those kids are in 10th grade. I know a parent, actually, really good friend of mine, that he can't read, he can't do math. And the question that I have is, what do you do with these 9th, 10th, 11th graders that are way back here? And so how do we get them out of school? And that's one of the interesting things why I really am interested in ECO. Like, where are we at with ECO? Because that's, if the kid doesn't want to go to college, because not every kid wants to go to college, they want to learn a trade, that's fine, that's great. I never attended college, I went to a technical school. And some of these kids want to learn a trade because there's still jobs out there that people need. You need humans to work. And so that's the question that I've had. How do we get this machine going again, right? And maybe in the last, we've had the superintendent 4 years, maybe our last superintendent didn't really, maybe he lost it for us. And now we're playing catch up, in my opinion, possibly. And so, how do we play catch up? I think we're actually doing it. Great job of what you're doing out there. And it's just like a project manager. You can actually go ask the project manager, what does project management mean? From 10 different project managers, and you get 10 different answers. And it's almost like the young lady here says, it's like, let's talk about your project. Let's talk about your school. Let's talk about your class. Let's figure this out so we can all kind of collaborate together and see communicate. That's what we need to do. Because that's what happens a lot is we don't communicate, and everybody has this little thing that holds the hair. Nobody goes, here's my cards. What do you want? Let's play a game. Let's figure it out, right? Another good example is the sheriff, our county sheriff, Don Mendoza. He actually retired about 3 years ago, and he went to be a substitute teacher. And he said, Rudy, have you ever sat in a classroom and seen how it is to be a substitute teacher? Because everybody out there says schools. Go sit in a classroom. He said, he's on, you have about 25 kids in the classroom. He's on, probably 7 of them are very interested and engaged. He's on, the other ones, they don't want to. He said, I kind of had to put my foot down with him and said, if you always don't want to sit here and learn what I'm going to teach you today, then you need to sit there and put your phones away and you're not gonna disrupt the class because these other 7 or these other half wanna learn and don't disrupt it. I went into a 3rd grade class, probably this year, and I got to a couple of classes last year, and to get a 3rd grader to actually line up for recess, oh my God, those teachers, I'm like, whoa. It's just to line them up to go to recess. This isn't trying to teach them math yet and figure out all this other stuff. So I think we have this big, huge learning curve when we're doing it, and it's just gonna take a while to get going, in my opinion. And I appreciate your honesty as to what we're trying to do, right? That's what we can do, is try day by day and figure it out. Thank you.
Please, Suchin, if you can go ahead and talk about what you've been doing.
Yes, ma'am. Madam President and member of the board, I want to share with you what we have done so far and what is different from this year and the year before to address the question that the member of the board raised. First of all, the report that we have, if we have the report by standard, I give you example. I just look at the standard of 5th grade. The standard level, for example, the equivalent fraction. We know exactly, Johnny, what did you do last year? At the student level, at the teacher level, at the school level. And we know exactly that for last year, how many points far away to be proficient, which is level 4, and which standard that you are weak, which standard that you are strong. So we can identify. What I'm saying is that currently the teacher didn't work in the dark. They are clearly know exactly in each student. Teacher by himself, they know exactly what area that they need to work on and what area that they are strong. And we suggest them that each teacher pick 3 to 5 standard, whatever that they think that's appropriate in that class, 3 to 5 standard, and work on it to improve it. And what we provide to them, that let's say that I'm not good last year based on the data that I have on fraction, equivalent fraction in 5th grade. We have video clip from Khan Academy, for whatever that relate to that standard. So the teacher can see the modeling, 3 or 4 or 5 video clip. And plus, we have release item in that standard that form the part. So the teacher know exactly that how deep that I gonna teach for that standard. So what I'm saying is the difference between this year and the year before that, we are clearly identify the area, all the levels, school level, kid level, teacher level. So, and we have the resource. By the way, if the teacher copy your URL, give to the kid, work with the parent, give the sample of question, release question, practice it, I think it's gonna encourage the kid to do better. I hope I make it clear.
And Suchin, one more thing that I wish you would discuss for just a minute. Based on what I heard from Secretary Garcia around the United States and what's going on around the United States, can you give the state trends here? What's happening with mathematics in New Mexico and the scores, et cetera?
Let's go back a little bit that by theory, a good item is about 40 to 60% correct. And it seemed to me that the PARC data is pretty hard, between 20 to 30% nationwide. What I'm saying, because it's the nation, it's mathematics is pretty hard. you can see that over the country, we have probably 10 states or whatever that take part last year. Since the test is hard, and the percent proficient is hard to be 60%, I tell you that, it is hard to be 60%. For example, New Mexico State is about 20% proficient last year, this state-wise. And our district, right along, and by the way, we are flat state is not. So what my point is, to set the goal 60% is kind of unrealistic, in my opinion, but I don't know, I answer correct or it's not correct.
Madam President, also one of the things that we need to take into consideration is the previous governorship actually kind of threw a couple of curveballs to the state of New Mexico as into the different park testing and what type of testing we're going to do. And now our new governor actually has some initiative to actually let's move the state of New Mexico from 50 to hopefully way up there. And we also dealt with the Yazzie Martinez lawsuit that the general public out there doesn't realize how all this stuff works together. And everybody wants their grades fixed. And one of the things somebody mentioned is parenting. That's one of the most important things of a family. And yes, I understand there's some unfortunately that don't have parenting, but it just, we all have to work together and figure out how we move to the next level. And so, I think in the last year, 2 years, since I've been here, our school district has dealt a lot of curveballs at us, whether we wanted them, whether we needed them, or like once again, the Yazzie Martinez lawsuit that we have now, the state of New Mexico has to provide and how does that work? Like President Noble said, that's going to take a little bit of a challenge how that works also, because you can't just throw money in the school district, say here, don't figure it out, because you need facilities, you need to figure out like how you're going to get teachers, like nationwide, it's hard to get teachers nationwide, you all know, and for a teacher to be a teacher, it's amazing. It's pretty neat, and for all the volunteers that go to volunteer at the schools, that's even more amazing. We just have to work as a community together and go move, right? Thank you.
Board Member Cashman.
So two last points on math, and I think everybody knows I'm passionate about math. And I'm not asking you to answer this, but this is something serious that the district has to grapple with. Ortiz Middle School is dying because they don't have math teachers. To just say we can't hire them, we've got to get creative. That means maybe we have to move some of those teachers around, but we've got to help those, there aren't math teachers out there that are willing to come and work. And so, but we've got to do something for those kids because, to have them sit there, because I think they're short 3 or 4 math teachers over there. Hopefully that's better, and that was at the beginning of the school year. But just please do something to get some math teachers in there, no matter what we have to do. It can't be a permanent teacher, but we've got to get some math. And the last thing, and it's not a criticism, please don't, but Board Member Garcia knows this just as well as I do, because we had children that went to Piñon. We hear again and again, Piñon is an example. It is reflective of our school district. We've heard that for many, many years. Piñon is performing for many, many years, whether it's the new, so we've got to tap in, and I know why. I mean, I've spent many, many hours volunteering at Piñon, but we can't keep on saying, well, Piñon, and then we don't do that for every of our other students. I mean, and I think we all know why Piñon is so successful. We've got to put in those support, and I'm not going to go into what my theories are on it, but we've got to put those supports in for all of our other kids, because Piñon has made it work. It made it work for my kids over 17 years ago. And so that is a shining star mirroring what our population is. And, programs have come and gone. And I would say to us, as we adopt math curriculum, and I know we're going different approaches and everything, it is better to invest in a program that is going to help our kids succeed no matter what the cost is than to choose a math curriculum that is cheaper and isn't getting us there. And, and I really want the district to invest those resources and stop playing games with the curriculum and say, well, we'll choose something that's a little bit less. We don't have time to waste. Let's get we know what those curriculums work, and they work, because I meet kids at St. Mike's and they say, I hated the curriculum. It's not flashy, but I can tell you when I went to St. Mike's or when I went on to college, oh, they're Mrs. So-and-so or Mr. So-and-so, and I hated that curriculum. It wasn't something that inspired me, but it gave me the solid foundation so I can be successful. And Board Member Garcia is right. With math, you can't be a successful business person without math. You can't be a plumber without the math. There are many things, and I look at my car mechanics and my plumbers, which I've recently seen, they're making good money on things that I would never do, but they're making good money. So we're not saying that everyone has to go on for a 4-year degree, but they need to be able to read, they need to be able to do the basic math. And so enough of me on my soapbox on math, and everybody knows I do have a soapbox in math, but I want to see those change because we've been talking about this for a long time, and it's not changing fast enough. And I do appreciate the new supports that the teachers have, because once you see, if you're not that good in equivalent fractions or whatever, when you see what is out there and you see those videos, it tells you how it was taught 30 years ago. The game has been upped, and you have to do a lot more, but there are modeling that you can say, okay, I can do this, and I don't have to wait until professional development. I've got to take some responsibility too, because our teachers are professionals.
Okay, I think we're ready to hear from our partners. Welcome. Thanks for being here.
Board President Noble and board members Garcia, Cashman, and Carrillo, thank you for this opportunity to present. We'd like to thank the community members who are here and board member-elect Carmen Gonzalez, if she's still here. And we are also very grateful to Linda Sink, Dr. Lomax, Peter McWayne, and Jennifer Hooten in the central administration for this opportunity and for the welcome that they've given to Math Amigos over the last 2 or 3 years. And we'd like to thank Board Member Cashman for coming to almost every one of our 7 teacher training workshops since the day one. So we are going to give you an overview of Math Amigos as really a unique community Santa Fe Public School partnership. And why? Because we are committed to inspiring teachers and kids to love math. So what is our mission? Our mission is to focus on math workshops for teachers. Why did we pick that strategy? Because it's the most direct route to raising proficiency in our 5 target schools. And by working in those 5 target schools, we hope to reach, over 1,000 children by working with their teachers. We provide quality professional development for teachers at Cesar Chavez, El Camino Real, Nino Otero, Ramirez Thomas, and Sweeney, and now even more, which we'll tell you about in a minute. We're committed to deepening our teachers' mathematical thinking, and you've heard some commentary on teacher preparation and what is the math requirement to be hired as a teacher in elementary school in New Mexico? None. what the requirement is that you have a general teaching license, that you've majored in education. And what I've been told by experts in this district is the districts rely on the community colleges and the universities. When they give a degree in education, they rely on the higher ed schools to prepare those people in math. And if you look at the requirements, sometimes it's only 9 hours out of a whole major in education, and it may only be in how to teach math, not necessarily in math for elementary kids. We have a further mission to excite teachers about teaching math. Next slide. And I'd like to recognize our leadership team and ask them to raise their hands as I mention their names. As you can see, Math Amigos has reached out to a number of different community partners, and this is only a partial list. Co-leads are myself, Gary Clendenin, and Roberta Colton. We have many partners, as you can see there, in Santa Fe Public Schools. And again, we're so grateful to Curriculum and Instruction and to Linda Sink and to Dr. Garcia for supporting this partnership. We work with the Interfaith Coalition for Public Education, Poder Familiar. Dean Gerber, there he is. He's one of the founders of Math Amigos and one of our excellent contacts with the Santa Fe Alliance for Science. Next slide. Funding. We started out with $10,000 about 3 years ago, and through grant support, we're so grateful to the City of Santa Fe Children and Youth Commission. They gave us $41,000 2 years in a row, and this is our second year. We're very grateful this year to have some funding from Santa Fe Public Schools. The Santa Fe Community Foundation has funded us all 3 years, and we're again grateful to have $10,000 from them. Much to our surprise, we were eligible to apply for a Santa Fe County Youth Court grant. And we said, you know, we're focusing on math and teacher training and parent engagement, and they told us to apply, so we did. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. And then a donor advised fund at the Community Foundation has kicked in money on a number of junctures when we were really at a critical point, and so we're very grateful to that support. Next slide. So what are our accomplishments to date? We've actually done 7 workshops now since January, February of 2018, with over 1,000 teacher training hours for over 100 teachers. We do very intensive evaluation. Over 90% of our teaching sessions at these workshops are rated 4 or 5 out of 5. We do provide in-class coaching. So any teacher who comes to a workshop, at that workshop has an opportunity to sign up for 2 hours of in-class coaching when they're actually trying out one of the strategies that they've learned at a workshop. And what we're trying to do at these workshops, you've heard the deep and strong work from Curriculum and Instruction and from Linda Sink's talented group. We are trying to give teachers strategies they can turn around and use the next day in their classroom. And the coaches are there for them. It's optional. They can sign up for the coaches. They're not doing any evaluation. You know, there's nothing that goes into their folder. The coaches are just there to do whatever that teacher needs for that particular teaching session. We've done 3 math family nights, each with 25 tables that are staffed by our teachers and a lot of volunteers, with fun games and puzzles for parents to do with kids. We offer free dinner. We've had over 750 parents and kids attend these 3 family nights. We, as you heard, do detailed evaluation and teacher feedback, and we want very much to do continuous improvement. We do a lot of critiquing, debriefing of our workshops. That's very important to us. We have about a 95% return rate on our evaluations because we've paired them with hand in your evaluation and you get your stipend. So that's really worked well for us, and we really value that feedback. We have given over 1,200 volunteer hours from our core team just in the past 1 year alone. So that's a, you know, at a budget level, that's a pretty significant contribution. Next slide. Here you can see some pictures from our family nights and from our teaching workshops. So we're really into hands-on and interactive, and basically we've seen a lot of participation and excitement on the part of teachers and kids. So what are our priorities for 2019-2020? We've jumped this year thanks to support from Linda and Santa Fe Public Schools from funding 30 teacher stipends per workshop to 45, and I can tell you we have a workshop this coming Saturday. There's a little flyer for you there, and we're going to have 54 teachers there. 13, you know, most of them are from our 5 target schools, but 13 of those teachers are from other schools in the district. We're going to continue our in-class coaching. We have 5, I don't know how we were so lucky to find these people, 5 experienced teachers, retired, that love teaching, and we have 1 for each of our target schools to have continuity of their relationship with the teachers. We're going to continue to sponsor math family nights at 3 different schools, and we want to enhance our parent engagement and bilingual teaching materials this year above and beyond all else. So we want to encourage more family math activities at home and in school, and Gary has put together a workbook for families that has 40 different games, and of course paying for those to be reproduced is pretty expensive, but we think we have some funds that we can do that and hand these out to the teachers and to the parents. So what are new things that we're doing this year? We get a lot of feedback from the teachers. What do they need? What would help them? Really on the grassroots level. We've started an after-school math circles club with the teen court funding at El Camino Real, and we have 2 teachers that will be working and are working with student clubs that are based on this math circles. It sort of is a way to get kids to have deeper thinking about math. Gary Clendenin has spearheaded Stories with Math. There's 11 teachers now. How many stories have they written, Gary?
Everybody's written 1.
Yeah. So they're creating stories related to math, like little case histories, that reflect the Santa Fe experience for the kids. And those stories are used in the classroom to stimulate kids to play, you know, do a game with the story, work out the problems in the story. And we're going to be putting those all together, a Santa Fe-based project that reflects Santa Fe experience for kids and teachers. So that'll be a book that we're going to be publishing and giving them later in the year. And we've also brought in 3 nationally renowned math educators. One just came on Friday and was at Gonzales with the gifted and talented teachers. And we have 2 coming in the spring. And then our last slide, what are we thinking about as we look to the future? Well, we know from our workshops that teachers respond to quality professional development that is respectful, relational, and supportive. We know that they respond when it's iterative, that they can have a chance to look at exploding dots or Cuisenaire rods or math circles many times from different perspectives. They've really valued having sessions at every workshop, new sessions, but that address challenges that they've raised in the topics that we've been presenting. They respond when the professional development is innovative and interactive. We give them time for discussion and collaboration. And importantly, and this hasn't been mentioned, we've had teachers on our evaluations say in one single class that they may have from 3 to 7 different subgroups of kids at different levels of skill in math. That is daunting. That is daunting. So we try to be responsive to that challenge of multi-level classroom learning groups. We know that families engage in school events. We need to do more. We feel more parent outreach with better, different strategies is needed. We've got a wonderful young woman now, Yessi Bermejo, who fluent in Spanish, and she goes to our family nights and finds parents who are willing to spend 5 minutes and say how they use math in their everyday life. We think kids are missing that. So we're trying to build that into our family nights especially. And finally, Math Amigos aspires to structured transformational change over 5 to 10 years so that all our children are proficient in math. We believe, for life in the 21st century, math and reading are not just vital skills. Given our attendance gaps and the importance of a viable future, from a community perspective, we consider math and reading at a level of life and death. We must do better. In President Noble's words, we must reimagine. And more importantly, we must make change happen. How do we do this given funding at 2008 levels? How do we get all hands on deck to support our teachers in the classroom? 1, we believe we need even broader structured transformational change that brings in more of the community. And secondly, we need stronger and more expanded community partnerships that harness the tremendous talent and resources in our community. Thank you very much. And last slide, of course, questions.
Secretary Garcia.
Well, Madam President, thank you. Thank you for what you do, Dr. Gerber, for your vision for Math Amigos. It's the volunteers that actually volunteer out there. Just like I mentioned earlier, just thank you for what you all do. That's great. A couple of questions I have is, who picks the age group of kids at the different schools, or how does that work?
So we started out working with grade 3 and 4 because it was required by the City of Santa Fe Children and Youth Commission. And we are very grateful to Julie Sanchez. President Noble can probably comment on this, but to expand that funding so we could use it for grades 1 to 6 took an entire year, and it had to go through 3 committees, and it had to be presented to the City Council. But they did approve that. Also, when we applied, we knew how much money. There was a selected pot of money, and we wanted to pick 5 of the high challenge schools. So our schools, as I mentioned, are Cesar Chavez, El Camino, Nina, Sweeney, and Ramirez Thomas. So that's how we came up with those.
Then also really quick, Madam President, in regards to the funding, thank you for going out there looking for additional funding, and whatever I can do to help out with Santa Fe County for our Community Services Department, as Board Member Noble did, I will definitely look into that and see how we can help out additionally, and if not this year, definitely next year. But thank you once again for all you.
We'll be in touch with you.
Okay.
Was there an RFP? Is there any sort of sense of the durability of your funding from the city and the philanthropic partners? Is it sort of a year-by-year thing, or can you make multi-year plans, I guess is what I'm asking.
I would say it's year by year. we were so grateful that, the good thing about the city application was they funded for 2 years.
Okay. That was a 2-year
so
cycle.
that is the bulk of our funding. And so we were very appreciative that that happened. But most of the funding here, you know, we've gone to some of the smaller funders. We haven't gone to Lannel or places like that, but they fund on a year-to-year basis.
Are you reapplying for the city? This must be another
I
2 years?
think we're hoping to. Yeah.
Do you have all of the tutors that you need, or are you actively recruiting people?
Well, there is a very good question, and let me just say, Math Amigos is focusing on teacher training and parent engagement. Lynn is going to be talking to you about tutors. So we actually are not in the tutoring business, which is good because they were getting us so confused all the time. So Math Amigos is, with my Lynn, is doing teachers, and Lynn Heffron is doing tutors. So.
Okay. Well, do we have other questions? And I just also want to say thank you. Thank you for your work. Thank you to everybody for what you do for Math Amigos. This has been just sort of listening to Dr. Garcia and some of the staff, I think really an effective and wonderful partnership, and held up as an exemplar as to things we want to do more of. And I think the lessons that you have, that you may not even know, the wisdom you have of what it has taken to get the attention of teachers, to get them fired up, that sort of thing. I hope we can download and use that wisdom as we seek to do it in more other different and, you know, just replicate it in lots of ways. So thank you.
Thank you, and I meant to mention 2 of our coaches are here, Maureen Dunn and Judy Ewert, and I also, the foundation has provided us with these wonderful vistas that help us. Penny Holcomb and Ralph, if you want to raise your hand, Ralph. There's Penny. So thank you for this opportunity.
Great, and thank you all for your work. Board Member Cashman.
First of all, Math Amigos knows I'm a fan of yours. Thank you for all that you've done for our community. You saw a need and you didn't wait, you just stepped up. And I really appreciate that as a member of the community. I hope the board looks at that we are giving them $13,000 a year. We surely could give them some more money than $13,000. So just something for the 2 new board members to think about when it becomes budget time. Having attended the training and everything, and I know that a lot of the people that are associated with Math Amigos are passionate about math. So I would ask you, and maybe you can talk to it, Ms. Bickley, what does the district need to do to give you help to move us forward? Or what do you see that as a community we're still lacking? And what is it that, you know, I know you can't get into how we educate our kids because that is our responsibility. But what, you know, I'm sure you've talked about, what is it that you need us to either try to implement or to move us as a district forward in math? Because, you know, I just sometimes think we're on a treadmill and we need to get off the treadmill and actually run the marathon. What do we need to quickly move us forward? If you have any recommendations, I'm sure the board would like to hear them.
Well, I think the most important thing is a structured change process that's broader, that really expands the partnership idea. You know, I've always had a dream that we get the convention center and we invite everybody in town that cares about kids and education, and we set up a process that combines school leadership and community partners and let people go to what they care most about and really set in motion a very broad, you know, structured change process over 5 to 10 years. I think you're totally right. You know, so much is being done now. but it takes time. I know some of you have heard, I've had experience in medical education curriculum and at Texas Tech, and it was not doing well. Let's put it that way. It took us 7 years of getting all hands on deck. But I think if we could have a broader framework, you know, maybe a task force that combines school leaders with community leaders to do the visioning, but also to do the structure that will make the change happen. You know, not just a silver bullet. I mean, I think you've heard, there's about 5 or 6 key elements to getting every kid to 80%, and I think it is completely doable. But they have to be interconnected. You know, they have to be step by step, year by year, interconnected so they move forward. There is a way to set up a framework so that that can happen, and that you all and the community, you know, that all of us can track how far are we getting, not just with PARCC scores. I don't think, well, I won't go into my thought about the PARCC scores. You know, I think they're okay, but they're not enough. But I think we need a broader, more structured change process. It's hard because, you know, we are at 2008 funding. There's not enough capacity to really, I think, broaden out all the time. But, you know, with all of your contacts, of each of you, if we could get the county on board, if we could get our leaders on board, we could bring in these partnerships. You know, we could have the community conversations. We could get every parent out there. You know, what do we have? We have 12,500 kids in Santa Fe Public Schools. We have a city of, say, 80,000. There should be somebody there for every kid almost. You know, I like the visioning idea, but I think it has to have a structure, and it has to have a timeline, and it has to have a follow-up. And I just, you know, I think that's what it would take, because we don't have enough resources right now, I don't think, to help every teacher with what they need. The teaching assistants, the, you know, the games, the computer access. And I don't know if Gary or Roberta, if I could ask them, do you have anything you want to add? You know, we're not doing a good enough job with parents either. That would take a whole structure. It is so hard to get parents that are working so hard to come in, you know. That takes a whole, not just one person. That would take a team. Well, maybe we don't have the money to pay, you know, more than 2 people in Santa Fe Public Schools, but we might be able to get 10 more people from the community that would be like an adjunct staff for them, you know, to give them the capacity to really spread out. So I've probably said enough, but thank you.
Board Member Carrillo.
Since it was just mentioned, I would just remind you all that if you want aligned, effective pre-K and prenatal care, you've got to go to the house that's over there on Don Gaspar and Old Santa Fe Trail. And what is their number at, like 125 million now or something?
For early childhood?
Yeah.
No, 500 million.
Great. For just early childhood.
That's about the request for, this is my day job, in case you didn't
Yeah,
know.
so
I am actually in the midst of writing a needs assessment and strategic plan for early childhood. But yes, with the new
Terrific.
requested budget that the new secretary and the new department will oversee, it's about $500 million.
And I hope what they're doing is because Maureen and I have talked about this quite a bit, I hope what they're doing is basing that, first off, developing in their mind the programs that are needed for continuity, certification, teaching, everything else, and then putting a price tag. Because what we found in the last legislature is they just said, hey, let's just give education this amount of money, and obviously didn't meet YASI, but without regard to what it was supposed to do. It's like, figure out what you want first. If you need a 3-room house with a garage, well, that's what you need, and then you put the budget to it. Business plan, kind of simple. And so a couple things. First, the ask on money. So I remember, not just last year, but the year before, communities and schools, you know, we've given them extra funding so they could expand their programming. And at one point, you know, I just said to Julia, what's the ask? What do you need? It's just not, hey, what can you give us? No, what do you need to roll this out for these schools? So what I would say to you guys is, at some point, come, when they start working on budget, come with the ask, right? And we're giving you 13 now, is that right? Mm-hmm. Okay, you know what? To really do what we need to do to expand this to parents and everything else, we need 29 in the coming year. And this is what it's going to be used for, and itemize it. Because that's what we respond to, and I'm sure that's what the next 5 will respond to. Have an ask. And you never get what you don't ask for, just in life. And then the other thing is, I'm curious about this because we're very fortunate, and I imagine most of the people in Math Amigos are retired from either the labs or being engineers. What is your plan to sustain Math Amigos into the future? Because I would say what's really challenging for districts is, as we come to rely more and more on you, you need to be there. And Lynn, you may not always be there, and you, right? So what is your plan? And if you don't have one right now, that's fine, but I'd be thinking about a plan for sustainability.
We think about sustainability and capacity all the time. So it's started with me as the lead. Then we got Gary, luckily. This year we have Roberta. So we're trying to expand our co-leads. And all of us have slightly different skill sets, which is good. There's some overlap, which is also good. So the other thing is, you know, we work so closely with the district, and there's a lot of, you know, what we're looking for is sort of a permeable membrane here. And so there's a lot of dialogue back and forth, and when we see certain types of teacher needs, you know, we meet with Peter, we meet with Dr. Lomax. Jennifer is on our team, and our team meets every week. So we're hoping, you know, by being, I don't want to say embedded, but, you know, connected, pretty well connected with the structure of Santa Fe Public Schools, that will help with the sustainability, that some of the things they've encouraged us to do, you know, over time, you know, with the funding and so forth, they might begin doing. So those are 2 things that we're thinking about, but it's a good question, and we worry about that too.
Well, good. So, because if you become embedded and then you're not there, what does that do to us? So one of the things maybe to consider, and you don't have to respond to this, pre-retirees from Sandia, from the Santa Fe Institute, from the labs, people in their 50s that maybe, you know, in the late 50s that maybe are going to have their 30 years really soon, and really kind of gently recruiting, because this is something that's really cool to do for our kids in Santa Fe.
So there's a wonderful missed opportunity, I think, in our county, our city, our businesses. The lab actually gives paid release to their employees who work in the schools. Why couldn't we start doing that here in town? That would expand our math teachers, our science, you know, maybe not teachers, but why couldn't we reach out to businesses, to the county, you know, to the so many different types of employers that we have here, and launch a program of paid release time? 1 hour a week would make a huge difference in some of these schools.
There's a new president of the chamber. Maybe when they have their ed committee meeting, you can bring that up. That's an excellent idea. And there's, you know, it takes them to the next level too, the chamber and their involvement in our schools. Parent Academy, and maybe you can speak to this, because I remember it being much more vibrant years ago than it is now, and how, you know, the whole idea of the Parent Academy was not teaching ESL and computer skills, okay? When we envisioned the Parent Academy in 2013, it was around how do we teach parents to be their kids' best teachers and advocates? In some cases, yeah, you've got to teach them how to negotiate power school. You got to do that, right? But I mean, that was why we created the Parent Academy in 2013. So I'm curious as to, you don't have to answer it now, but how you guys can all work together to make the Parent Academy vibrant again to meet the needs of organizations like Math Amigos. And the other thing to think about, and this goes to something that I believe, I don't know, kind of a combination of maybe what was said. There are many other countries on the planet that have excellent education systems, but one of the things that's recognized and often commented or often said is that basically by the end of 8th grade we have all the math we need to function in most jobs that you need. Now, if you're going to go on in science and all these different things, well then, yeah, you've got to have all of this other math and the cognitive skills and, I mean, all of these different things to be able to do them. But I feel like you're grimacing at me having said that. Oh, okay. No, but if you think about it, when's the last time any of, not you guys, when's the last time any of us used the skills we learned in Algebra 2 or calculus or anything like that? Okay, because you're just, okay, really? Seriously? I can see you doing that. But it's like most people, like even the plumber or the carpenter or the auto mechanic, they get their basic math, their functional math skills to be able to run their business, you know, to estimate profit and loss and to do all that kind of division and things like that. And then, or, you know, if they're in construction, they have programs that they use. But then when we think about it, after 8th grade, and I know we're dependent on universities too. This is so, if somebody does want to go to college or whatever their requirements, but making sure that our kids are totally functional. Like the whole idea that we're teaching now in schools, financial literacy. Nobody taught that 5 years ago. Parents taught that 5 years ago. How to be responsible with your money, but now the public schools is teaching it. But you know, having that maybe even at the earlier grades, because one of the things you're also in relation to eco, which is what Rudy brought up, if someone knows they want to build houses or boats or whatever it is they want to do, they don't necessarily need to take a lot of these things at the high school level, but they can be taking these trade-related and certificate-related and dual credit-related things to get them where they truly kind of want to be. So, you know, not every kid needs to take I mean, it was Mrs. Loftus that just ingrained my love of math. But I didn't really need to take Algebra 2 or calculus or any of those things. And I didn't have the brain for calculus. But it's just, you know, thinking long, you know, the long game for our kids around functional math for them. So that was the only other, the note I had. But the other thing is just thank you so much for the work you do. And because I know there are sometimes there are people within the district that are critical of us bringing in others from the outside to perform different functions. Actually, it's organizations maybe not at the district, but I'm very grateful that you do what you do, and I don't think we could do what you do, and so very grateful that you're doing it.
Thank you.
And to be clear, I use Algebra 2 all the time because I'm not good enough at Microsoft Excel to use spreadsheet math, so I just do it the old-fashioned way.
May I respond?
Please, yeah.
You actually should probably state your name, because if we didn't do this, but
Yep.
just so that, because it's being videotaped.
Videotape, come up to the microphone. I was going to repeat what you said.
We view Math Amigos, we view math more as, in a broader sense, I think, than adding or subtracting or multiplying binomials or something like that. We look at it as problem solving and estimation and you know, facing situations that don't fit into a box and you have to find a way to solve it. So we have math circles in all of our sessions. And math circles just give you a puzzle without all the math requirements, the math language, the math courses, the math background, and just ask you to solve the puzzles. So it's a type of thinking. So we're thinking of math more as a type of thinking, and that's what we try to deal with in our workshop sessions. I mean, we also have sessions on fractions and geometry and things that teachers can bring into their classroom, but we have more abstract thinking kinds of things as well. So I just
No, that sounds great. That's what, to me, that's what algebra is. It teaches you how to problem solve. It's not about all the X's and the Y's and whatever. Ultimately, it's teaching you how to look at a problem and solve it, numbers or otherwise. Thank you, Gary, very much.
Okay, do we get to hear from Ms. Heffron now?
Thank you. I think I still have a voice. Madam President Noble and board members Garcia, Cashman, and Carrillo, Superintendent Linda Sink, whom I'm most grateful to for asking me to be here and talk about a program that I've been involved with now for about 4.5 years. I did not prepare a beautiful slideshow. I do have some handouts which I provided to each of you and are available if you would like them from the audience here. You can pass them around, especially to Dean Gerber over there, who was a tutor. I want you to know the following. What I've put out here are the goals of tutoring, the tutor's primary roles, and these are based on lessons learned, best practices, and what I call the supply and demand curve. Maybe that's my MBA part speaking. What happened 4.5 years ago was one teacher at Santa Fe High, his name was Jonathan Hack. He came to Interfaith Coalition people, including myself, and asked, can I find some math tutors for Algebra 1? We did that. We jumped on board. Bob and I found math tutors that first spring semester of 2015. In the fall, I was asked to find even more math tutors, which I continued to do into that academic year. Those math tutors were looking at helping teachers specifically because students were in remedial need. They did not know math, basic math. They didn't know the basic arithmetic and the times tables and everything you and I all learned together. Therefore, we came in to meet that demand. The teachers, the teachers were all very optimistic and helpful with this. They wanted help. When you're sitting there in a high school classroom with 25 and 30 students, not everybody completely fluent in English, and all of a sudden, half of your classroom doesn't want to be there because they don't know what it is to learn and value education, much less they said, oh, in the 5th grade, I had that. I don't need that. Well, the fact is they're failing Algebra 1 and 2 in geometry because they didn't get it. So please note the following. I became a tutoring liaison officially, shall we say, a couple of years ago when Sabra and I and Dr. Garcia were also meeting. In the meantime, Dr. Garcia has also put me on her Diversity and Equity Council. And you might be interested to know, as part of that council, I am looking at public policy for education initiatives, including where are we with allocation of funds to respond to this lawsuit, because the funding hasn't been there. I back up a little. So you can see here my goals of tutoring that have been established really address the whole child. We help students with emotional security and social stability. We help teachers, parents, and students overcome learned helplessness. I can't do it is their mantra to themselves internally and sometimes externally, including the parents. We help students learn, how to self-assess, how to take responsibility for your own ambition, whatever that ambition is. I need to go to ECO. I need to become a person who works in the film industry, a growing industry here. We would like to also promote active listening, encourage questions for better problem solving. We want the students asking the questions so we can help them problem solve. It's coming out of their head, not someone adult talking at them or to them or telling them how to think specifically all the time, some of the time. We also want to be able to prevent what I call closed minds for the future. Thus, my title of my program is called Future Facing Education. And the reason it's future facing is because what we discovered at Santa Fe High after year 2.5, suddenly now I had Principal Carl Morano there asking me to present, bring in some tutors and present to all the teachers before the students return. I did that, and guess what? It was asked, the ask was, speaking of the ask, there was no money, but the ask was, how many other teachers would you like? Come see me, you need a tutor. Guess who came forward? Anita Nugent, who teaches physics, who's never wanted anybody involved with her in physics. The teacher for biology came through. She needed help in the labs. Computer science, Brian Smith, I need help in 3 classes. You can see on my list here down from Santa Fe High School towards the bottom of the sheet, these are the subjects: algebra, geometry, applied math, trig, calc, pre-calc, principles of technology, etc. Advanced English, French. Here's a tutor who's worked 3 years, guess what? Tutoring French, because Sherry Johnson, before she retired, asked for that. I've been asked for tutors for ESL, Advanced English, etc. This year, I've just now been asked for an ESL specialist in special education. Go figure. I haven't found that person. In case you want to raise your hand, come to me. You will also notice that, for instance, I see the primary roles of our tutors to be the positive adult in the room who cares about the student and their challenges and their successes. So many of these challenges students are, as we all well know, they have trauma at home. Some of them are undocumented. Some of them are afraid to appear because of that and ask for help. We want our tutors to create respectful relationships, to establish close coordination with the teacher. That's key. And I might add, with the principal. And that's been key for me, and I think whatever success we've had, both at Santa Fe and now at Sweeney. We want to help students overcome mathematical and reading anxieties. This also applies to parents, as it's been brought up earlier. How do we do that? You'll notice the following. Over time, in these schools, I've had probably recruited, trained, provided workshops for over 50 tutors. Not all 50 are still with us. They travel. They're all retired. They're volunteers. No one, including myself, has been paid a dime. What happened after one of the teachers at Santa Fe High went over to Mandela, he said, please, I need your help at Mandela. So guess what? I had a tutors working with them in math, and guess what they did? They designed a geodesic dome, which combined math, art, and design. And they actually designed and built it over where is now the new Milagro, is out in that backyard behind the school at that time. A big, huge dome. Guess what the dome was supposed to be used? A collapsible unit to send to refugees. So whole families could live in a collapse. It could expand and you could have a refugee site. Use these. That's outside the box reimagining. How do you find a tutor who's going to want to do that kind of thinking? How do you find a teacher in a school that wants to support that? At Mandela, I'm back this year with math tutors and the After School Tuesday program. And I personally am working with them on their UN Model Council, as I am also a delegate to the United Nations in March for the Commission on the Status of Women. At Milagro, I had been asked by Adelante to find a tutor who was bilingual for 2 students. They were Guatemalan girls, sisters. They were desperate. I went to Sweeney and asked the principal there back in 2018. I said, by the way, I've been doing my research, and it seems to me that kids are falling off in 3rd grade. If they can't read and write and do basic math after 3rd grade, they are always going to be in catch-up mode. How can we be helpful to this? I have an idea. Can we bring some tutors in? She said, absolutely, we did. The pilot program worked. We did reading and math grades 3 and 4. This past academic year, we did the same thing. And by the way, one of our tutors started the Sweeney Scholarship Book Club to teach the love of reading with fourth grade students. We gave them awards at the end of the year because they had learned and were actually reading books, taking them home, reporting on what they were reading. Also, I would like for you to know that Cesar Chavez, I had a tutor go over there and create last year an after-school math club. The math club created a video because guess what? They designed and built trees made out of wire, which are like mini sculptures. And they videoed it, the students did. I guess what I'm trying to say is the following. We need tutors. Tutors are perfect for this math protocol of Math Matters framework. If you have a tutor, which has been traditionally what we've sort of been doing already, the tutor sits during class in the classroom. They may come once a week, twice a week. They sit, they listen to the teacher's lesson, 10 minutes, let's say. And then the tutor works with a small group of students. Or as I've said in the middle of this page, I have 3 different styles of tutoring: rotating, longitudinal, and as a teacher adjunct. And let me explain. So let's say, in this particular case now, we have a math instruction for K through 6, 10 minutes with practice and skills, 40 minutes with independent learning, and possibly 30 minutes with targeted interventions. If that isn't a call for more tutors, I don't know what is. It gives an absolute perfect, wonderful structure, something I like to think we've already been doing in the classrooms, but including for reading, not just math at Sweeney, but reading and math because you have to read the problems. So this is a framework I really support, because it fits right into what our tutors have been doing. An example, I would have a retired math teacher come into the classroom and work with the 4th grade on Tuesdays, doing the same thing. Guess what? A longitudinal means we're sitting at a table with 3 kids, and it's those same 3 kids all semester. Some of my tutors, a woman came in and joined me last spring. She's a former teacher herself, elementary level. She was rotating, meaning she walked around the classroom, table to table, desk to desk, in other words, to help those students who needed help. A third is a teacher adjunct, and that's because perhaps she's with Math Amigos. Carolyn Stupin, who has been a teacher at the community college, she's been a tutor with me for about 3-4 years now, since the beginning. She is a teacher adjunct. She knows how to teach teachers how to teach. She comes into the classroom and takes over part of the lesson plan because she's got an idea as how to go best forward and complement what the teacher does. So together they're in unison on a plan, but it's not just only the teacher teaching. It's the teacher adjunct. You should know that most of the tutors that I do have, many of them, you're right, they're former lab employees. They're retired physicists. They are physicists over at the high school teaching math as well as physics. They are retired teachers. A few of them, including 2 I have at Mandela right now, are retired college professors of math. Okay? The recruiting here is changing, as you well know, because there is much more of a need for bilingual tutoring, just as we need bilingual teachers. Thus, I ask you, the need now, from my point of view, is we need tutoring liaisons. If I'm one at 2 schools only, even though other schools have jumped in to ask for help, we need tutoring liaisons at every one of the schools. Secondly, we need a concerted recruitment for bilingual tutors in reading and math. I rest my case. Except one more thing. I'd like to come for the ask at some point. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Secretary Garcia.
Just Madam President, once again, thank you. So many thank yous that everybody got up there. Great job.
Thank you.
Board
Yes.
Member Cashman.
I will echo what Secretary Garcia said. Thank you. I know tutors are important. My husband doesn't tutor for Santa Fe Public Schools, but he tutors for the community college. And so our kids need tutors. It's hard to get them. I'm going to pass you a name of some. No, it's not of a tutor, but I want you to go ahead and contact the educational reporter for the Santa Fe New Mexican, Dylan Mullen. Let's get an article in the paper so maybe people will read it and we can get more people to, step up to the plate, because
Yes.
there are a lot of people. And I also think we have older teachers as they retire, a lot of times they came back to sub for our district. Now the way the retirement system is working, I think they're not going to be willing to do that, but I'm sure many of them will be willing to volunteer. So I'm going to give you his name and number, and please give him a call, and you can say, that pesky board member Cashman said, but he needs some articles, and this would be a good one for the community.
I'd be happy to do that. And FYI, the previous ways I've recruited, it's now a lot word of mouth. People call me right now, and I say, how did you find me? At any rate, thank you very much. I put those little blurbs in the Santa Fe, New Mexico, in the bottom of the education page.
Big full-page article, tell Dylan.
Okay.
Pictures.
Can do. Okay.
And then he can call me up and say, what are you saying? And I'll tell him. But I'm sure he's looking for articles on education. This would help. And a lot of people want to reach out, but sometimes they don't, you know. And so something, how can you make a difference in the community you live in? And that would be a perfect title for the article, Volunteer for Santa Fe Public Schools.
Board Member Carrillo, I also wanted you to know that this teacher I'd mentioned who's at the community college, Carolyn, I've witnessed her remedial math classes there. And what she does when you walk in the class, she hands you an 8x11 with many problems on it, basic math problems. Could be multiplication, addition, subtraction. And you time yourself as a student, as an adult student, you time yourself. How many can you get done in a time frame? And you gear yourself towards progress on how many problems you can solve in a time frame. So that's kind of cool. And we tried that once in one of the high school classes that I walked in on, and I said, how about this? How many can you do in 5 minutes? No, excuse me, 3 minutes. and it woke them up. This is probably what it really did. It woke them up. Anyway.
And I like how you talk about different organizations giving people time off. I mean, when I was in the military, they definitely value you volunteering in the community. And as long as it wasn't something mission important, they encourage. So maybe what we could do is encourage, since the mayor wants to work with Santa Fe Public Schools, encourage him to start giving his city employees time off to come and work in the schools. And maybe they're already doing that, but we also have the National Guard sitting on frontage road. They may be people that could be approached because they want to, it's good public relations, it's good, they want to be involved in their communities.
Just one thing to share, the Interfaith Coalition had a big forum back in June. Out of that came 5 task forces. One of them is the Engaging Businesses Task Force. I am just so blown away. We have 53 businesses, agencies on our mailing list now. The point of this is to create business internships for kids in middle school and high school. So again, I just want to say, this community is just pouring with people. If we could structure a way to use their talents, to supplement, amplify, not replace, supplement, coordinate with Santa Fe Public Schools. So this group is going gangbusters, and we have our meetings down at 500 Market Station. Rich Brown, you know, the mayor is behind this somewhere because Rich Brown is in the Office of Economic Development and his people are coming. Sonia Gunther is coming from Santa Fe Public Schools. Larry Chavez from Santa Fe Public Schools. I just give you that as an example of what could happen here if we can just get out of the box a little bit.
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, please.
Thank you, President Noble. I did want to make sure it's understood that the recruitment and continued training and implementation of tutors, whatever school that might be, needs to be a mandate supported by you and the board and the Santa Fe Public Schools. That needs to be addressed. From my point of view, it needs to be vocalized. It needs to be put in writing that you indeed are supportive of a tutoring initiative that can not only help the math program as we go forward through the year and next year, but whether it's reading or whatever subject, even at the high school level. I would find it much easier not only to write that article and recruit if that backing were provided, period.
It's a very important
Thank
point.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Well, I certainly appreciate everybody's passion here, and certainly Lynn up here speaking with such passion and supporting the schools. Thank you so much. So, Ms. Heffron, you are looking for tutoring liaisons. You will plug them in as well as tutors?
I know that Sabra has been trying to find tutoring liaisons for
Okay.
the different schools as part of another mandate, right? I'm not sure how successful. At last report, none were found at other schools. It's, as you can tell, quite frankly, the work involved in a liaison work, if you're going to be, from my point of view, successful, here, you know, it takes a lot of time and energy. So, for instance, I might recruit from a newspaper ad or something, or I interview I interview everybody individually first, and then I make an actual, human resources judgment as to whether I think they'll be good and where they might be best fit. I already am talking to teachers to find out what their needs are. I'm trying to always be in the classroom periodically to find out how everybody is working. How are the students doing? Where are the needs now not being met, et cetera? And I put those adjunct things in my paper because those also come up in other ways for community members and volunteers to be helpful. So yes, did I answer your question?
You did. And you actually answered a question I had earlier, which was how you recruit. And it sounds like word of mouth is one of the best things. And to me, it's an absolute clear indication that you're being successful in that things are springing up, like an after-school math club and a geodesic dome.
Right, exactly, and the book club.
And the book club, yes. So when, those must be successful matches, obviously, when you plug somebody in very well, because then it just amplifies almost incalculably.
They are, thank you. And any help you can provide on, do you want to tutor Algebra 2? You're so good at it, evidently.
I actually love algebra, but no, I have my Volunteer for the Schools project.
Okay, just wondering. I'm always in that ask.
But I do actually know a few, and I think both Board Member Cashman and Board Member Carrillo made really good points about that, because I am thinking of some retired teachers I know who should be recruited to be tutors, and I think Board Member Carrillo's right, and even, the likes of Rudy Garcia, these folks, I don't know if you've hit the big round number, but I think we can go below 50 people who have had very good careers in city, county, state government, and who have a lot of energy and a lot more to give, that we could recruit relatively young people to tutor, and even in just transition times when they're transitioning from one career to another or what have you.
And by the way, I'm all for trying to find, maybe this is the financial ask piece of it. I'm also very fond of trying to find, like Mentoring Works does, trying to find students at the community college or just around St. John's. I have a strong relationship there, to come into the schools and possibly tutor. The trouble is, of course, our tutoring has been done during the day with the teacher present, which is mandatory, of course, to have that adult in the room. So, but any other aspect of finding people to help, peer-to-peer tutoring is just the best. I'd love for seniors at Santa Fe High and juniors at Santa Fe High to get community service because they went over to Sweeney and helped third graders learn to read for fun, even if they don't know phonics.
It's a wonderful idea. Okay. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate the passion, the energy, the time, and yeah, think about the structured ask. And I do love the idea, and you painted a pretty clear picture, Lynn Bickley, of a big event where we could plug in lots of people. And honestly, I think we should work on something like that. It's something I've been passionate about for a long time, because I think a lot of people don't know how to plug in, and we do need some infrastructure for the support of that. But I think we got to try. We got to work on it, and we got to figure out ways to plug people in sort of long-term, short-term, lots of different ways.
You know, on that, you might want to look back. We did that for 2 years. We had it at the Santa Fe High Gym is when we did it, where all these groups, and this was previous administration. And the people that were here then, you might want to look back and see how they did it and organize it so you don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Absolutely. Good stuff. Thank you. Okay. I think we are moving to the end. Advanced planning. We do have, there's a CRC meeting tomorrow, I'm guessing. That's tomorrow, right? Yep. And we have a board meeting next week. I unfortunately have not been able to figure out a way to be here because I have work travel, and so I won't be here next week. And I will probably call in from San Antonio. So, anything else on advanced planning? No? Good. All right. We are adjourned. Thank you all very much.